Yeah.
I want to quickly cover Classic Physique because I want to spend the rest of the show talking about 212,
Sure.
where I have a lot of fans, a lot of people that love 212. So I want to cover that. But let's go over Classic Physique real quick. Coming into Classic Physique for the 2020 Mr. Olympia, a lot of people were having Logan Franklin really making a big splash. Unfortunately, it didn't work out the way Logan wanted it to. I think he placed ninth, and I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I
Uh,
think ninth was the place.
was the ninth? Okay. But I love Logan Franklin's physique. I also really enjoy Wesley Vissers as he has a much different physique. Very, a lot of people want to say very classic looking or old school. I think there's parts of his physique that aren't specifically desirable in the eyes of the judges, but
Uh,
I mean, everyone's different. He has a different physique, and I think I liked his physique. We'll definitely put some photos on the screen for everyone to make their own comparisons. But I think he might have gotten overlooked just a little bit. But to be fair, and then I'll let you take the mic. There's so many new names in classic physique. I feel like every year the second call out completely flips. I remember when shoot, I can't even think of his name right now. Uh, Something Anon. He placed, what was it, fourth in 2018.
uh-huh.
Henry P- Henry Pierre
Oh,
Anon.
here, Ano. Right.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, he actually flips back and forth from open to classic, but I'm a huge fan of his physique too.
Yeah, I really loved his physique I think he placed fourth in 2018, and then he pretty much just like completely disappeared from that first call
Yeah,
out.
actually, you hit on a great point. I think one of the coolest parts about the classic physique division right now is its annual evolution and how fast guys get phased out of that first group.
Yeah.
If you're not in progress with the best of them, you're getting left behind really quick. Names like Henry Pierano, um, what's the Persian guy? Arash Rabar.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yep.
a lot started or the advent of the classic. I think he's going to have a hard time trying to break back into that top group. They were talking about Sidi Katsovic when the division first started out.
Yep.
He never really going in that division. Danny Hester is obviously very well phased out by this point.
Yep.
Another name that was supposed to be the potential future of the division, kind of in a way that people talk about like Brian Jones now. Do you remember Robert Timms? I
Oh.
believe kind of discovered him and he was training him for a while, but he was a tall black guy with really good shape. Was kind of in the discussion with Steve Lorius as someone who could really, grab a hold of the division. And, he's been pretty much lost in the pack too. So it's an
Oh.
incredibly competitive division. Those guys really bring it every year. And Josh, I got to tell you, man, when I was watching it on Friday morning, I don't know if it was Friday or Saturday, but my eyes were transfixed, man. They were completely glued. It felt like I was watching like art in motion, all the way from the first to the third call out. I mean, it was beauty. It was art, man. It was beauty. And there was a lot of qualities about that you don't see expressed in the open class. And again, I can totally understand guys making the decision to want to bypass going the open route for the sake of the classic because there's a lot to be liked about that division. Um, some of the names that you talked about, Logan Franklin, I thought he looked phenomenal. I didn't necessarily think his hype going into the show was warranted, but we've kind of known Logan Franklin to be kind of a self-generating, self-anointed kind of
Yes.
hype
Exactly.
person.
Yep.
Uh, Kind of take that with a grain of salt that his hype coming into the show was really self-generated. So
Yep.
I didn't really have expectations one way or the other. Um, I do think he was slightly overlooked, though. A couple of guys that placed in front of him, Ricky Moten, and then
Yeah.
one other. I just didn't really like them in those spots. I don't really like Ricky Moten as a classic physique competitor.
Mhm.
There's just
And
not a lot.
Logan beat him at the New York, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
There's just qualities about him that scream classic to me. Um, I'm a huge fan of Wesley Vissers' physique too. I know it's kind of an unpopular opinion, but I mean, I don't know how he doesn't just bring to mind the name Arnold Schwarzenegger to every single person with every pose and every move he makes. And for that quality alone, I think there's a lot to appreciate and admire about him. That said, his condition in the past has left something to be desired, and the trunk choice this year was a little bit off-putting.
Yeah.
And trying to kind of play on the Arnold Schwarzenegger look, who, Arnold was known for wearing the trunks very, very high, to kind of try to be deceptive with the wider hips and the wide waist.
Yep.
But,
It didn't translate.
It didn't translate, and it stuck out like a sore thumb. But I still thought it was a really good package. It was a really good look. And I appreciate the unique qualities that he brings to the division, because doesn't look like anybody else up there, but he reminds us of one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time. And for that, I think he's got a place in the division. I'm surprised people give him such a hard time.
Yep.
Another name I really liked from this division that I thought was massively overlooked, and tell me if you agree or disagree, but I really liked Deandre Campbell.
Yes.
So he took,
especially after the show, I mean, he looked amazing on Instagram.
Yeah, so he took 10th, and if you remember, they had him like squaring. I think they had him like right in the middle of the second call out. He was with Brian Jones, who they held back from the first group. He might have even been standing next to Alex Cavanero for a little bit too, which that story. Much respect to the physique, but I'm just not a huge fan of him for Classic. There's just not a lot of qualities about him that immediately bring the word classic to mind, and I think in a sense his physique kind of very easily gets lost because there aren't.
He looks like a sucked down 212.
Yeah, he just doesn't really have a lot of the hallmark classic characteristics. I mean, I can acknowledge he's got a small waist, he's got a good structure, good lines, and he doesn't really have weak poses. But at the same token, kind of like a Ricky Moten, there's just not a lot about him that just screams classic. So for me, that's an easy one to kind of just get lost. But yeah, I thought Deandre Campbell and Logan Franklin both could have placed much higher, maybe even as high as like 7th, 8th, or 6th, 7th.
Okay.
But as a whole, I think the division is going in a tremendous direction. I was very, very impressed by Chris Bumstead this year. I have been a bit of a Chris Bumstead hater in the past. It was very hard for me in past years to overlook those incredibly weak biceps, particularly in comparison to Breon Ansley's world beater biceps that, so effectively displays in all of his classic shots. But for Chris Bumstead to come in this year at the exact same weight as last year, to look 15 pounds bigger, to have completely transformed that back double bicep, and to bring those arms up from extremely subpar to, I don't really know what I'd want to call them, but they didn't hurt his physique whatsoever this year. They didn't draw from it or take away from it one bit.
Yep.
My hat's off to him. I think he won it convincingly in a way that he didn't do last year. And, and then when you think about those comparison shots that he did with Ramy, that fun little photo shoot they did the next day, I think that further cements his legacy as a world-class physique and a world-class bodybuilder, to be able to stand next to the biggest bodybuilder maybe we've ever seen, and to be able to basically stand toe-to-toe with him and really not give up a whole lot. A lot of people did a lot of polls. Who would you take? What physique do you like? And I'm sure Bumstead came out very favorably on a lot of those polls. Even if he gave up a little bit of size, certainly wasn't giving up anything in terms of quality or flow or aesthetics or just overall appearance.
Yeah. He definitely, as soon as he walked out in prejudging, I knew I was wrong, because I had Breon Ansley winning the title back. I thought that the arms were just too. The lagging biceps were just too glaring for me personally, and I also thought that he had a somewhat weak back with off conditioning last year. Now, obviously, looking back now, what him and Ian, his brother-in-law and coach, did.
That's right.
Yeah, what they did this year was phenomenal. I feel like his legs, if anything, grew and came in much better, a lot harder. You could see the striations and separations going all the way up the quadricep. The back density, the amount of muscle he put on the back, I thought was very noticeable. And like you said, with the biceps and the back double, I thought that was very noticeable of an improvement.
Yeah, and for any young viewers that are kind of just getting into bodybuilding, I think an
Yes.
important lesson to learn from that is I pointed out the fact that he made all of those massive improvements to his physique, and he came in at approximately the same scale weight
Exactly.
as prior. So understand, young guys getting into the game, it's not a matter of just seeing the scale go up and up and up. The physique is very, very capable of making improvements without just putting on arbitrary scale weight. So keep that in mind and don't let the scale be the only tool to evaluate whether your physique is progressing in the right direction.
Yep. I can completely agree on a personal level. I know when I was cutting last year and I was working with Rebecca Woodley, a local legend in the sport.
Yeah.
She was saying, don't even worry about the scale. Just come in on Sundays, run through the poses, and I'll let you know what you need to fix.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I didn't get with her in time. I partnered up with her about a month and a half out from the show, and I was still consuming like 150 grams of carbs. So she completely sucked that out, and my body just transformed
Yeah.
within a month and a half. And luckily, I'm going to start with her. I think the 31st we're going to be starting, and we'll
All
see.
right. She's great, man.
Yeah,
You're
she has a good eye. So I'm very excited to see what we can bring as a team to. I think we're going to do the NPC Midwest Naturals in St. Louis in August. So I know I want to do that show, and I know I want to do. I'd like to get my pro card in the NANBF. So that'll also be a show I'll do this year.
yeah. So you're gonna come back in town for that show, correct?
Yeah, I'll fly in. Yep.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have to hit some training and get to
I'd
get
love.
a contest season update for you, and then we'll see what Jason's doing too for sure. Let's see. So we got classic. Oh yeah, we can't overlook Rough Diesel. I mean, Terrence
Oh,
Ruffin, a fellow veteran. I mean, that guy just really coming into his own the last 3 years. I mean, the amount of changes he's brought to his physique, especially with the level of conditioning he brought this year, was I did not see it coming. I thought I saw him in the top four. He completely blew my expectations away with that top two finish.
I tell you what, I've been a huge fan of Terrence for a while. I've been singing his praises for many, many years.
Yep.
What immediately grabbed my attention about Terrence, and tell me if this did it for you too, but do you recall when he first came out like 3 or 4 years ago with the Francis Benfato pose? The one like this?
Yes.
Yeah, when he started releasing those Francis Benfato poses, I immediately said, this is classic. This is what the division is supposed to be about. And unfortunately, his physique was getting lost in the lineup because of his slight structure and his lack of size. But props to him for killing it in the gym and finally doing what he needed to do to get that size where it needed to be, because I thought he very deservedly took that second place spot. You've got a lot of people saying that Breon relinquished the second place spot after some of that elbow jarring with Bumstead. But
Mm.
honestly, my eyes were already going to Terrence's physique before the elbow bumping, and I thought he looked very much like he belonged sitting next to Bumstead in that top two spot.
Yeah, that yeah, I was surprised personally, but with the elbow bumping, I mean that's just pretty common, especially in bodybuilding. It's just it's part of the sport.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think I wanted to. We'll finish up classic with this. I've gotten some criticism in the comment sections from some of these trolls that say that classic physique isn't bodybuilding, and I can't disagree more. Classic physique is an expression of bodybuilding with a classic flair.
I think you termed it greatly. But I also think like on a different level, bodybuilding is like in the eye of the beholder. It is what you want it to be.
Yes.
And building for one person is not what bodybuilding is for the next person. Like who am I to tell the person that fell in love with bodybuilding in the 60s and 70s and 80s, but then maybe like tuned out in the 90s and early 2000s, that modern bodybuilding is better than their idea of what bodybuilding is. So
Yeah.
again, all in the eye of the beholder. But I certainly love your description and expression of what classic physique is.
Yeah. because that for me, and that makes a good point. It's in the eye of the beholder. It's you look at what you like and what you think bodybuilding is might not be no disrespect to the champ, but it might not be what a big Rami is in bodybuilding. So I can agree with that.
Yeah.
But even myself, coming from Classic Physique for my first show, and now kind of wanting to really love bodybuilding enough to put on those man panties. That was such a struggle for me. So I still struggle with it a little bit, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, bodybuilding only suffers when we try to categorize it or say that it's something and not something else. I think
Putting it in
body
a box.
always at its best when we invite and we encourage the apples and oranges conversations, and we encourage a whole host of different types of physiques to stand next to each other, and we allow the audience to decide what they like best. I think
Yes.
that's when it's at its absolute best.
That's great.
Any sport is in a place where everyone is chasing one particular look, that's when the sport starts to go in a bad direction. But when people simply just play up the hand that they were given to the best of their ability and everyone just puts it out there, that's when the sport is at its absolute best.
Yep. It really diversifies the lineups for the judges, where they can, if everyone's bringing the best of what they can bring, then the judges have a much better chance of, really picking apart those physiques and figuring out what they want as judges. So
Mm-hmm.
that's good. I guess lastly, real quick for Classic, I really liked. I know we mentioned him earlier, Brian Jones. Pretty much coming out of the woodworks for me. I've never heard of him before, and that's just my fault for not being a big Classic follower. But this guy, how does he make the weight requirements? He's got to be 6 foot something.
Right. So Brian's actually a casual friend of mine. I've been following him since he won the Classic overall at the USA's in 2018,
Okay.
and that's kind of the hallmark of his physique is he truly looks like he's about 50 pounds heavier than what he steps on the scale to be. And, I think it's an incredible combination of genetics and probably a really, really light skeletal structure somehow. But just an incredible physique. And I still think he's so raw, not only in terms of his physique quality, but his presentation. And, I really think the sky is the limit for a physique like that. I think if he can get with a true posing coach that can really show him how to better display his in a classical presentation. And then, if he just lets a couple more years, just occur and his physique matures and the quality and the separation improves, he's going to be right there with Bumstead.
Oh, for
I
sure.
think they're going to make that a really tough conversation. But I've also heard Brian iterate that he's got a lot of interest in going into the open class. And, I think that could be a great home for him. And one of the things that I would love to see ultimately happen with the sport is a lot of those guys like Brian and potentially like the Logan Franklins, the Wesley Visors, a lot of these taller but still classical physiques, hopefully outgrow the confines of the Classic division and push into the open class, because I think that further contributes to that apples and oranges conversation that help the open class grow. I think when you have a bunch of really squatty, full-blown open class physiques, it's not as interesting as when you have, some Cedric McMillan type physiques, as well as some Flex Lewis type physiques in the mix.
Sure.
Some little, some big, some in between, some shape, some freak, a little bit of.
Yeah, I could definitely think of what's his name? Is it Jimmy the Giant, or AKA the Giant?
Oh, yeah. Jamie, the 6'5" guy.
I mean, the amount of size that guy has on his frame, and still coming in shape. I was really impressed with his showing at the British Grand Prix. So very excited for him. Brand new pro. I mean, sky's the limit for him.
I couldn't stay off him in that lineup. I thought he was maybe pushing Regan and Mark Hector in terms of just, you couldn't look away from him.
Yep. Yeah, just absolute freak factor, but still being in an aesthetic frame. I
Mhm.
thought that he looked really good, but also still had what you're saying is that freak factor that bodybuilding might need in
Right.
2021.
Or man.
Yeah, so that's cool that you know Brian Jones. Very interesting to hear that he's thinking about doing open. Would be very excited to see him or someone like Wesley Vissers potentially grow into what their genetics can allow. Really push that envelope. 212. Let's do 212. What did you see? Who were your favorites going into the show, and then who was your big surprises? I know I have a couple surprises in placings that I was not ready for.
So let's just get it out of the way, man. Sean Clarita absolutely blew my fucking mind.
Yep.
Uh, I've been a huge fan of Sean, and I've been singing his praises for a long time. Um, one of the things that I will typically say about Sean Clarita is that standing alone, he's one of my favorite bodybuilders in the world, hands down. You know, I love physiques that when they're standing alone, you have no idea either how big or how small they are. And Sean is put together in such a unique way that it's not so obvious that when you look at just his photos that he's like 5'2".
Yeah.
He's got good balance and good proportions. Um, but I've just always loved his physique. I think he just looks so crazy in his front lax and his front double. And I've always seen shades of guys like Flex Wheeler and kind of a vintage Ronnie Coleman. And
Yeah.
he finally actualized that this year with what he brought. When he walked out, in particular with that black background that they used for the 212 guys, immediately brought shades of the 1999 English Grand Prix show.
Yeah.
Both Ronnie Coleman and Flex Wheeler, both of those guys, that's what I immediately thought of with just the bubbly round nature of the physique, the extreme vascularity, the incredible condition, the super tight hips and the billowing quads. And his biceps look like they grew like another couple of inches this year. I
Yeah.
mean, it was one of those displays that for me, it was over before it started. And, if you look at the comparison photos and you're just looking at the photos alone, I think you can say it was a pretty close contest between him and Kamal. But
Hmm.
I think actually watching things happen in motion, Josh, I think it was a bloodbath, dude. Like, I don't even think it was close. I really
Wow.
don't. I thought it was about as decisive as any win of any division this entire weekend. And man, unless someone like Lunsford really figures out their formula, I don't know if I see anybody wrestling it away from him. I really don't. Uh,
Yeah.
so speaking of that, biggest disappointment was probably Derek Lunsford. I'm sure he was probably everybody's biggest disappointment from the weekend. But obviously probably biggest surprise too, in that after missing the mark so badly in 2019, I think we were all certain that he was going to rectify that, and to not only miss the mark again, but to also drop another couple of placings. I
Yep.
think that probably just the biggest surprise of the weekend. And, it invites a whole lot of questions like, does he need a new coach, or is he simply just outgrown the division? And is his look a product of the fact that he's just not meant to pull it down that hard and then try to bring a properly peaked look? So I don't know where the answer lies with him, but that was really disappointing to see for certain.
Yeah. That's a good point. I definitely was surprised with well, I hate to say it, but like I guess I really wasn't surprised with what he brought because it seems to be the standard. In no disrespect, I mean, me being not even an NPC level competitor, I look at these guys as world class athletes, the best in the world in their sport. So when I'm hyper fixating, just like how Ian does on the podcast, focusing on those small little things with like Sean Clarity, I think that his chest might be undersized. But like it's silly for me to just focus on that one little thing when there's so many other crazy things about these athletes that I should be focusing on. But it seems that in this world of critics, everyone's a critic, including myself. That seems to be what we focus on. I wanted to. Oh, here they are. I was trying to focus on what you're saying, but I also wanted to pull up the scorecard. The Oli Crivy, the guy who placed sixth. I think he placed second behind Angel Calderon at the
Uh,
Spain. That guy completely surprised me. I did not see him placing that well. And even more, he actually he actually placed out over Angel. Respectfully, Ollie being sixth and Angel being seventh. I was
yeah,
really surprised with that.
I say he was not on my radar whatsoever, so I completely missed with him. I think he could have potentially even placed a little bit better had he
Yeah.
been on somebody's radar coming into the show. But I think with understanding who he is and his name coming into the show, that was probably about as high as they were going to let him go this year.
Yeah.
But remarkably impressive. I also thought Angel Calderon looked pretty good too. I know he was a little bit flat, but man, that's a crazy physique. You know, the quads, the
Mhm.
fullness of his chest.
His
Very, very,
front lat
very,
spread is so unique from everyone else on the stage. It almost makes me think he's doing something wrong, but it looks appeasing to look at it. Definitely world class. I love his physique.
yeah. Now, a couple guys that I want to highlight in the 212 as it pertains to just my thoughts on bodybuilding and training. Both Sean Clarita and your boy Derek Oslin.
Mhm.
I just want to highlight them for a quick second because I know both of those guys to be huge proponents of heavy, old school, progressive overload weight training. And I think a lot of guys improperly assume that maybe that's the preferred training style for guys that maybe have more rugged, grittier physiques that don't necessarily have good shape.
Yeah.
Or and those are two guys with phenomenal shape, phenomenal flow, small waist, X
Yeah.
frames, everything that you'd want from an aesthetic physique. But those guys train in that same hardcore, old school, gritty, progressive fashion that, say, a Dorian Yates or Ronnie Coleman would train in. And so I think that's just important to point out that, the guys with shape train just like that too. And if you're trying to have a world class physique, you've got to sling some iron. There's no
Mhm.
getting around.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point because even with my own, I hate to keep bringing it back to me, but even with my own bodybuilding career, or whatever you want to call it, um, people have always told me that squatting and deadlifting is going to blow your midsection out. But then, you're looking at these guys, they have very small controlled midsections, beautiful oblique muscles, but like you said, they're slinging the iron.
Mm-hmm.
And you start thinking about who's the guy? Branch, yeah, Branch Warren. That's the guy I think like, okay, if you're gonna sling like crazy weight with terrible form, that's what you're gonna end up looking like. Which,
Right.
no disrespect to him, he worked with the hand he was dealt. Um, but yeah, like you said, like these guys are in the gym training harder, sometimes even harder than some of the bigger guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely something to point out, especially for the newcomers, is don't be afraid to hit the big weights. Don't be afraid to squat. Maybe if you don't barbell squat or barbell bench, you can still find other ways to do things. Specifically people like Phil Heath, working with the machine equipment. Dexter Jackson is notorious for using machines and the pin loaded, the plate loaded.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a thought. Don't even with classic physique, as you said, don't put your brain in a box. Allow yourself to think freely about what, like you said, what bodybuilding looks like to you. It's
Yeah.
definitely a good point.
And to further hit on that point before we jump back to the 212, um, Chris Bumstead, our classic physique champion this year, he made all of those wholesale improvements to his physique, essentially training in a basement with nothing more than heavy slag iron. I think he had a barbell, plates, a Smith machine, and some dumbbells. And
Wow.
look at with that classic physique. So,
Wow.
just more evidence of the fact that you can build a world class physique without getting too cute.
Yeah. Proofs in the pudding.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah.
George Peterson. A lot of people had him placing very well. I think I don't know what it is, and maybe you can give me some insight from being a future pro. What when I look at his physique, like why is it that I don't like his physique? Like what is it? what is it that makes it so that I don't like it? And I don't know what it is. He always comes in like he's year round. He's shredded. So it's like for me, conditioning is one of my biggest things. But for some reason, every time I look at the guy, I there's just something about his physique that I don't like, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
So George's physique this year was a bit interesting for me. So, you know, obviously George had essentially peaked in the classic physique division, taking third, I believe, 2 years in a row before moving up to the 212. Is that right?
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
almost immediately after George had made that jump from classic to 212, he was releasing photos of himself in the 220s and the 230s, showing a level of conditioning that made me wonder, well, holy crap, is he going to outgrow 212 before he even does 212? So
Wow.
having, I fully expected George to bring a level of conditioning to the 212s that we had grown accustomed to seeing in the classic division, which was just absolutely inside out, full blown modern bodybuilder peeled. Am I right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
interestingly, in both showings, Tampa as well as the Olympia, his conditioning was really just, I would say, above average. There wasn't anything exceptional about his conditioning.
Yeah.
He didn't have striated glutes. I think they were just in shape. He didn't have any crazy dugout hamstrings or anything like that.
Okay.
Uh, so it was really, really odd showing for him in that he wasn't overwhelmingly bigger than everybody, but he also wasn't overwhelmingly conditioned. Um, Again, George has got a weird physique in that he's taller than everybody, but I don't feel like it's his size that is necessarily making him stand out in a negative light in the division. I think it's just that if you highlight your focus on George and you don't look at anybody else, you see
Yeah.
portions, and there's just more to be desired for his physique alone. It's not even in comparison to anybody left or right of him. You just look at those long legs and those long arms and that short torso, and you just
Mm.
think, man, I could still be like 30 pounds bigger and it wouldn't ruin his physique. And I think that's the holdup with the George Peterson physique. He's got such an alien like build with those long arms and long legs and the itty bitty torso that I think all of us subconsciously just want to see him blow that physique out to its absolute fullest potential, because he's already got one of the craziest backs in all of bodybuilding and one of the most unique physiques. I'd love to just see him approach it with no governor.
Mm. That would be very interesting to see. Maybe if he goes in and wins maybe if he wins the Arnold Classic or something. I mean, but then I mean, he's still in his prime. There's no reason to do a hottie and really stir things up.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. It's a tough one. I think that was a good insight for you. I definitely there's just something about it. Um,
Because like
um,
even if you think of like some of the other like historically taller physiques in the 212, like Flex Lewis honestly comes to mind. I believe Flex Lewis is closer to like 5'6" or 5'7",
okay.
which I think they consider like a bit tall for 212. Flex Lewis has kind of the longer torso, shorter limb physique, so he
Mm.
has more of a complete squattier, filled out look. Whereas again, with George's long, long arms and long legs and short torso, he just looks
Yeah.
like he can be a lot more filled out without ruining the flow. And I think that's just what we all want from him, and we just don't know it. You know,
Mm.
like I see a lot of like physique similarities to someone like a Ronnie Coleman with just like his proportions and the potential he has for that back. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Very large back. You did make a good point. Like I guess I don't look at the legs um, as much as I should when they're side by side with the other athletes. I think I make my conclusion in my head when they're doing their prejudging posing, their routines, and then when they're just side by side, potentially I'm not looking at the leg length, which
mm-hmm.
is a good point. Amadash Kanani, I was not surprised with what he brought. I thought that and for myself included, I added to the hype when he posted those photos. I wasn't impressed. I think that was completely the wrong direction that he should have went playing the size game. That's not what Kamal brought last year. There's no reason to think that bringing size was going to win him that show, and history will tell that the fifth place finish was not what he wanted.
Yeah, I've got to shoot you completely straight here, and no disrespect to Ahmad Ashkenani, but honestly, one of my least favorite physiques in bodybuilding, bar none. I mean, there's no single quality about it that I really like or appreciate.
Mm,
He doesn't bring separation.
nope,
He doesn't bring a great flowing shape.
nope.
Um,
Very blocky.
he's one of those guys who unfortunately is suspected of a lot of potential oil usage, and
Yeah,
I'm not someone who really cares a whole lot about that. I think just bring the best physique you can bring on game day. But he's one of those guys that presents it in a way that it's a bit unsightly and maybe it's a bit more obvious than other people. And his physique, it just doesn't really remind me of anybody else's, and it doesn't compare favorably to anybody else in that group. And I just really don't know how he positioned himself where he placed. I think he got a huge gift.
yep, absolutely. I think
I mean,
that the judges were expecting something, and he
placing like second or third, I just didn't see it for him. I mean, he's
mm,
pretty wide from the front, I guess, but there's just no admirable qualities to his physique. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I,
Some people will say like a Sean. Oh, go
like
ahead.
I was saying, it took me back to kind of the Kevin English era when I didn't really
Yeah,
like it at all. It was pretty torn up and it wasn't very pretty and it didn't really flow. It kind of just makes me think of that, even though they're totally different physiques, and just that I just don't like it.
that's funny you mentioned Kevin English, because I was actually looking at the 212. I'm a brand new bodybuilding fan, so it's funny that I'm building an audience, but I feel like the fans can kind of relate with me. A lot of people are just getting into the brand,
Mm,
but like looking at the Kevin Englishes and well, what's the other guy? Was it Henry or? Uh,
Henry, yeah.
yeah, the people like that, like I gotta do some athlete spotlights for those guys. But Kevin English really surprised me how he just completely disappeared. I was
Mm,
trying to find some stuff to finish the video, and I couldn't find anything. I'm like, what in the world?
yeah, I think he still trains people up at Bev's in New York City, and I think he's still an employee there. But yeah, he kind of fell off the scene.
Yeah. Um, with um, with Amadash Kanani, there really isn't anything with his physique, and it's not me being disrespectful. It's just me being critical, respectfully. It's very blocky. There's nothing that really draws you in. Like you said, there's nothing that can really allow his physique to be compared against the other athletes, especially the ones on the stage. Really reminds me of a polar opposite of a Sean Roden, where Sean Roden was just there with the right physique to get that nod. He didn't have anything that really jumped out. It was just a great overall package.
Mm,
Whereas Ahmad, I don't think he really knows where, or him or his coaches, where they really know where he's going with his physique. It's just mass.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I don't know where they take that, but I think we both agree it's just not an admirable look. And yeah, next.
Yeah, yeah. Um, let's see. I don't know too much about the two Korean guys. Both have last names Kim. I don't really. I
It,
wasn't following them at all.
I didn't really know anything about them either, but I thought they both looked eerily similar in
Yeah,
shape and bone structure. So that was interesting.
and they have the same last names. Errol Moore. Any thoughts on him?
Yeah, so I actually had a chance to meet Errol. I took a trip out to SoCal in 2018 when I was actually working with Milos for a short time.
Yep.
Errol, athlete of Milos, is off and on for a while too. I like Errol's physique a lot. I think he was a little outgunned here. I think this is a little bit too big of a stage for him. But I was really happy for him to see him place where he did earlier this year at the New York Pro. And, I think his physique just needs a little bit more time.
Hmm.
Sometimes guys get on a certain stage and they're just a little bit outclassed in terms of just overall maturity and development. And I think that was the case here. But I think his physique has a lot of promise.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Errol Moore switch to open sometime this year over in Europe?
He did. I think he switched to open and then he made the move back. So I don't
Yep.
really know what the future is for him, but I do like the physique. I do like the physique.
Okay. I think I don't think anyone's talking about it, and I'm trying to get him on the show. John Jewett, big surprise coming from really fighting for that the first call out in the top. I think it was the top four last year, and
Uh-huh.
then to finish up in 13th. What was it? Was it the judges not giving him that look he needed, or did he drop the ball in conditioning? Like, what's going on there?
So, I think John's placing last year, that fourth place, totally unprecedented for him. Coming off of I believe he had won the Tampa Pro or maybe had taken second
Yeah,
going
he
into
won the Tampa.
there. But, it was really just the perfect storm for him last year. And I think a lot of guys were off. And I think he came in at his all-time best form. John is a very knowledgeable guy. And, he really did his homework and he brought fantastic conditioning. And I think he devises his training in a way that really allows him to highlight his physique.
Mm,
That's, I think John has a lot of natural limitations, both structurally and in terms of his overall shape. And I think when a physique like that misses their mark, it's very easy for them to really drop in the placings. John's not going to, he's not going to beat anybody in those first few front shots, because he's not terribly wide upstairs. He doesn't have dominant limbs. So, he's already kind of losing off the bat with some of those front shots. And, in the years past, I think he really made up ground with the quality of his side shots and the conditioning from the rear.
yeah,
And
yeah,
you're just off the mark just a little bit, and you don't have supreme shape and supreme structure. Unfortunately, you open the door for a lot of guys who are better than you in the genetic column to overtake you. And
mhm,
that's the trouble with a guy like that. He's got to be 110% to actualize his potential. And I think that was the case. He just missed the mark.
mm. Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
But yeah,
Um,
I like
I
that. I think he would be better served taking some time away from the stage and trying to grow his physique just a little bit
mhm,
so that he doesn't have to be so reliant on
yep,
his prep, if that makes sense.
that makes a lot of sense. But coming from a fourth place finish, the stock is high. You got to compete. So,
Yeah.
hopefully he can take
That
this
would,
honest and kind criticism, and then move into the off season.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I think if anyone's cut out for taking a placing like that and growing from it and having a great rebound, I think it's him. So I think we can expect a better look from him next year. But will that result in a better placing? I'm not sure, man. I'm just not sure where his place is in the upper echelon of the division, like a 212, because when guys like Derek Oslin, when guys like that start really hitting their mark,
Yeah.
there's nowhere for a physique like his to go because you can't outwork someone's structure. No matter how smart John is and how applied he is, someone like Derek Oslin's always going to have better structure and better flow and better lines. And, at the upper echelon of the sport, unfortunately, that's just what you're going to run into. You know, no matter what you do, there are going to be a handful of guys that just have better genetics than you.
Yep. Especially, looking into 212, we got a lot of crazy people coming in to the sport. I'm very excited for Keon Pearson. And I know if you've watched the channel, I have been critical when he was in with Blackstone. I wasn't crazy happy about when he came out with the whole natural story. I didn't really buy it, but
No,
it's not.
like
It's
that.
yeah,
But I also didn't like when he left Blackstone Labs, from the industry pressure that came about after PJ Braun
yep,
kind of aired some of his thoughts about the Black Lives Matter movement. Um, I didn't like that move because I think anyone who's really aware of the circumstance of that situation knows that PJ Braun did a lot for Keon financially, uh, emotionally, physically. I mean, he was really there for him in every possible way.
yeah,
And, I think that was an unfortunate decision. And, it put Keon in a tough spot, because, politics were, at the forefront of the situation, and race and equality were at the forefront of the situation. But, you also have to keep in mind personal relationships and loyalty. And
Yeah.
I just like where he came out on all that. But separate from it, I think he's got one of the best physiques in the world. I think you're looking at one of maybe the top 3 to top 5 front double biceps in all of bodybuilding right now. And if he brings the condition, I don't even know if Sean Clarita can beat him.
Yeah, it's going to be a really tough one. I'm hopefully, I think he's with HD Muscle now out of Canada. I'm hoping that they do some sort of PR campaign for him, where we can really get to know Keon. I really do see him as a top Olympian in whatever class he wants to compete in. But I don't want the only thing that we know about him is him potentially being misleading or lying about his natural status, and then breaking a good relationship with potentially a father figure in the sport.
Right.
I don't think it looks good for him.
The third thing was dropping out of the Olympia.
Mhm.
I understand everyone's got a personal life and we don't know all the details, but in this sport, one thing that I don't like is selective transparency. I don't like the kind of athlete that is taking you with them every step of their prep, telling you that they're motivated, they're hungry, suggesting that they're giving you the full display of what they're thinking and feeling internally, only to then pull the rug out from us and say, I'm not doing the Olympia for personal reasons, and I need you all to respect that and understand that. I just feel like we deserve a little bit more with the expectation of transparency that's been laid out in front of us already. So, you've got a lot of defenders of Keon saying, well, you don't know what's going on in his personal life. It's not for you to make that judgment on him for not doing the show. But at the same time, you're a public figure and you've presented yourself as such, and you've been very transparent about what's going on in your life and your relationships and things like that up to a certain point. So at the end of the day, I guess just be consistent.
That's actually a very good point.
I
I don't follow. Oh,
I
go
don't
ahead. Go ahead.
had a problem with him stepping away from the Olympia and just telling us it's not the right time. If he could have been a little bit more consistent with his message and at least given us some type of insight into what he was dealing with. And you know what? I'm sure if he would have done that, that simply would have just endeared a lot more of his fan base to him, instead of leaving people on the fence about how they feel about him as a person and an athlete.
That's, yeah, again, even more great insight. All I know, I didn't watch his prep to the Olympia, but when he started talking about him taking time off for mental health, that's where I kind of got a little hot, because I was like, I'm very passionate about people taking care of their mental health. I think that we've lost a lot of great athletes from that specific thing, and for Keon to really step out of his comfort zone and say, "Hey, I'm having an issue. I need to take some time for me, because this is a career for a lifetime." But I think you make a great point about sticking with your brand and who you are as an athlete and a public figure. And if the fan, if he's putting it out that uh, that he's going to be competing, and his fans are expecting that. I think that you made a good point about that, and staying true with your brand and who you are to your fan base.
Yeah.
That's good.
I mean, leading into his prep for the Chicago/Atlanta Pro, I was following it every single day, and he was hammering home the message that he was so internally motivated and so hungry. So, that just wasn't all consistent or in line with the post-show message of, I'm unfocused, I'm depressed, my mental health is in flux. I think we all just would have appreciated a little bit more transparency. And like I already said, I think he would have potentially endeared a lot more fans to him by just being a little bit more transparent, because a lot of us athletes, we actually yearn to feel closer to some of our icons and
Mm.
athletes in the sport. And when we learn that some of these athletes are dealing with the same situations and circumstances and hardships that we're dealing with, that's going to endear us more to the athlete, not vice versa. We
Yes.
want to find out that our favorite athletes are humans and they deal with stresses and hardships and have to make sacrifices and tough decisions. So I think a lot of bodybuilders would benefit from just being consistent with their message, whether things are going good or they're going badly.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people, casual fans, me more towards, 2 or 3 years ago, think that every bodybuilder has a sponsorship, is getting money from the magazine still, and like all they do is wake up, do their fasted cardio, they train, and then they play video games.
Yeah,
Where in reality, it's not even close to the reality. If you're a successful bodybuilder, you're networking, you're working with your supplement sponsors, or your sometimes supplement affiliates, where you're not even making money, to build yourself up to having that conversation with brands and companies to make money.
that's right.
Yeah. So, even for myself, like that's something I always think about is like building the brand, putting myself out there so that people really know who I am. And I think that helps casual fans understand it a little bit more.
Hmm.
Lastly, I Dietrich Lewis, or Bo Lewis. What's your thoughts on his physique, and why do you think he plays so well at ninth?
Kickstand.
God, yeah, that's. I feel like they had to put him out there on that second call out just because of that. But
I
he did
got
bring good conditioning.
no homo. That's one of the most distracting things of this. I mean, every time he gets on stage, no homo, I'm looking at his junk and I'm really not assessing his physique. So even after 2 or 3 showings this year, I don't really know what I think of Dietrich Lewis, man. No, but in all honesty, I thought your boy Jason Lowe compared very well with him.
Yeah,
Was it the Tango? Yeah, I thought he compared very well with him. I don't think there's any like standout qualities about the Dietrich Lewis's physique.
mhm.
It's just pretty balanced and it's pretty mature. If I'm not mistaken, I think he won his pro card in the Masters like just a couple years ago. So
Oh,
I think his early 40s already. But yeah, he's got a good balanced, mature physique. But I don't really know like what I think about the future for him and the ceiling because when I think about guys who have a future or a ceiling, I typically like need to associate them as an athlete with either like a world beater shot or some type of characteristic that sets them like head and shoulders above everybody else. And like I don't think of any particular poses that come to mind with Dietrich Lewis, or any particular quality like shape or
yeah,
conditioning. I one of those guys that does a really good job of like ticking all of the boxes, but he's not getting like an A+ in any particular category, you know.
yeah.
And those
Maybe,
physiques lost pretty easily.
yeah, maybe a Sean Roden of the 212 potentially.
Yeah, that makes sense. If he's yeah, like those physiques, they don't do a ton for me. And it's not that I don't appreciate them. I tend to go for guys that like again they have a pose or two that stands out, or
Yep.
they have muscle groups that just stand out like head and shoulders above the class.
Yep. Yeah, you got to have something to market with, and unfortunately, your junk isn't something that you can market yourself with. And no disrespect, obviously. And let's finish it off. Guy Cisternino, I did an athlete spotlight video for him. I like his physique. I think he's placed very well in the last decade. Unfortunately, in the world of bodybuilding, you start talking about somebody placing highly in his sport in his category for over a decade. Eventually there's going to be a ceiling to that. Where do you think, he said he was talking about potentially having a better physique than Derek Lunsford this year. History will tell that that didn't happen. Obviously, did he miss the mark? What happened? Do you think he has a chance to make improvements in 2021? What do you say?
With all due respect to Guy, I think he was pretty delusional coming into the show. Guy's a good everyman's bodybuilder, but to compare himself to a genetic elite like Derek Lunsford is honestly absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Derek Lunsford is structurally one of the best bodybuilders we've seen in a long time, and he's got some of the best shape on a white guy that like we've seen in a really long time too. I
Hey,
mean, like
hey, shout out to the white boys.
I his front back double bicep are some of the best shots in like all of bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, like I think of Guy Cisternino, I don't think he has a single like hallmark pose,
Yeah, you're right.
hallmark muscle group. I mean, there's nothing about Guy Cisternino that really stands out that would make him get into this quality of conversation. I do have a lot of respect for Guy's history. I think he's won 2 or 3 New York pros.
Yep.
And again, I think he's done really well as kind of an everyman's bodybuilder with pretty, I guess I would say, average genetics. Structurally, he's not very gifted in that he's pretty wide in the waist. He's not especially wide upstairs.
Yeah.
I think he's up long in the torso. And he just never really had a whole lot of dominant poses aside from maybe a most muscular. And he was always a hair too tall for the class too, in my opinion, which made him look a little bit undersized compared to some of the shorter athletes.
I
So,
did think he was undersized
so
this year at least.
I think Guy has had a great physique, and I think he's done the absolute most with pretty average genetics, but not even on his best day is Guy Cisternino in a conversation with someone like Derek Lunsford, and that's just total blatant honesty.
Yes, I can't agree more. Yeah, I try to keep my words filtered, but I completely agree with you there.
Yeah.
And I mean, Hide Yamagishi. I mean, what do you say there? I mean, like, I like his physique, but I feel like the class is moving forward, just as Classic Physique is moving away from what's the guy who won the first one?
Danny Hester.
Danny Hester's. Yeah, same situation.
Yeah, I would actually say this is one of the better looks for Hide in the last few years.
Yeah,
I'm surprised that he's still getting after it. I'm sure a lot of that has to do with just being pretty close with Milos, and they've got a pretty long-standing relationship. And Milos is obviously very active on the bodybuilding scene, so I'm sure that plays a role. But yeah, I do think this was one of his better looks in the last few years. I thought he got a huge gift last year at that Japan show.
yeah, the Japan Pro. Yep.
Who did he beat there last year?
I couldn't tell you.
Someone got completely robbed, and I didn't like that. But I actually thought this was a good look for Hide. That said, you hit the nail on the head. The sport has just run past him, and I guess I don't really know why he's still doing it. I'm sure he just loves it, and that's why. So more power to him. But I don't know if he had any expectations of doing better than he did, but I think he ended up right where he got to be. And, I think his sport, or his time in the sport, unfortunately, is quickly coming to a close. I just don't think there's anything really there for him.
Yep, I can't agree more. Sometimes I always wonder, like, people like that, are they doing shows because potentially their sponsors are encouraging them to? But I think Hide's been in the sport so long, like, I don't think it's going to really be something like that.
Yeah, I think his brand and his legacy is pretty well cemented, so I'm not really sure what getting on the competition stage really does for him at this point.
At
But,
all. If anything positive,
Yeah, but I'll keep in mind that, Hide is one of probably a select few of Japanese bodybuilders that have achieved a level of prominence, and maybe he's still doing it for the Japanese fan base. Like maybe it is still growing in popularity in that sense, and
that's a really good point.
Getting on stage to that end. I'm not sure.
That's a really good point. I know something I really want to dig into. I'm not sure if you're interested, and we could do this in another episode. I really want to get into Indian bodybuilding. I've been really looking at it, trying to understand. There's only been like one open class successful Indian bodybuilder I can think of, and I can't think of his name right now. They have an entire organization there that doesn't compete in the IFBB, yet they have the Shrew Classic. So it kind of surprises me that when you look at that show every year, you don't have prominent Indian bodybuilders placing well there.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting subject. I'd have to do more homework, but off the top of my head, I imagine it's a blend of both Yeah, I guess I would say it's probably a strong blend of just the natural culture and the predisposition towards, um, I guess, academics and
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think have a strong focus on academics and, without having a full understanding of the genetic breakdown of Indian athletes, I suspect that the majority of Indians, genetically speaking, probably didn't hit the lottery as it pertains to bodybuilding genetics.
Sure.
So again, that combined focus on academic and intellectual exploits, because we do see India is one of the preeminent players in the world stage in terms of, uh, you know, intellects and world academics and, things like that. Um, I think that probably just has a lot to do with it. But I think it's so fascinating that that is one of the major hubs, internationally speaking, for bodybuilding from like a fan and travel and expo
Yeah.
perspective.
Yep.
So I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah, I'd love to have you come back on, because you start thinking about Kai Green, where I mean, he pretty much like not single-handedly, but I mean, his entire marketing team is based out of India, and
Right.
like everything he's been doing the last 3 years has been pretty much based out of his Indian headquarters. So,
Yeah. Well,
I've been doing a little bit of research, well, a lot of research, trying to really tap into that fan base,
yeah.
and then also I want to really look into the Korean fan base as well.
Yeah. And like on that kind of international like subject, as we were talking about Hide, and then you kind of brought India into the fold. I know for myself, when the time comes that I achieve IFBB pro status, one of the things that I want to do is I would like to do a lot of the international competitions,
Absolutely.
similar like Regan Grimes has done, because I would like to see what opportunities may come from trying to approach it from an international perspective for my brand, because anybody who follows bodybuilding knows that outside of the Olympia and the Arnold Classic, prize money is nothing to speak of. Even at like the New York Pro, which is the preeminent third biggest show in the world, I think prize money for first place is only like 10 grand or something. So
Is it 10?
if
Okay.
you need to compete for other potential benefits besides the prize purse. And, I see a lot of potential benefit by going international and growing a brand and a fan base in other parts of the world and seeing what that can do for my future as a bodybuilder, as opposed to, say, just targeting smaller tier 3 shows while I try to get my name and reputation up here in the States.
Yeah, that I can't agree more. I've definitely looked at it myself with even in the natural organizations. The WNBF, I don't think is strictly natural. It might be, I'm not sure. But they have some Spain shows and whatnot that I was looking at, trying to figure out how I could package it for the fiance, where it's like, hey, you want to go on vacation and also shave my butt?
Right. I've said it all the time. Like, oh yeah, babe, I can't wait till bodybuilding takes us all over the world.
uh, the dream, the dream. Well, it was honestly, Ty. It's been, I mean, 2 hours, 2 plus hours. We've had a lot of fun. I think we've talked a lot of good stuff. I want to give you the platform now. What projects are you working on? What brands are you partnered with, and potentially what do you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, man, I appreciate the time, and I'm glad we finally hooked up.
Yes.
But this was a pretty painstaking process on my behalf for us to finally link up.
Yeah,
I'm
you can share
pretty
that story.
illiterate, so the third time was the charm when we finally got this Skype interview to work out. But thank you for the time to drop some sponsors and things like that. I've been blessed to be working with Phase One Nutrition for the better part of the last 2 years. When I first got with Phase One Nutrition, they were kind of a groundbreaking, cutting edge supplement company that
Yep.
was dabbling in aggressive pre workouts and products like that. But they've now become a full fledged supplement line with amino acids, a whole host of pre workouts, both stem and non stem. We've got a whey protein isolate that's soon to be released. And we've got a whole host of health supplements that I take full advantage of, from a cycle support supplement to an anti-cortisol support supplement. Um, they've really got me covered basically with every aspect. So again, huge blessing to be working with Face on Nutrition, and they're actually based out of Columbia, Missouri. So
Oh wow.
also local, also affiliated with Jed North. Really appreciate you guys outfitting me with some of the best clothes in the game. I still work with Titan grips. If you've not had an opportunity to work with Titan grips, they're not like any other grip aid that you used before that simply just increase the circumference of the bar that you're using. They actually change the nature of the way that your mechanics function from your wrist to your elbows to your shoulders. And since I've been using the Titan grips, man, I've been able to circumvent a lot of the shoulder and the elbow pain that was really holding back a lot of my development. So very thankful for those guys for outfitting me with their products. But yeah, that pretty much wraps it up right now, man. Those are the three companies I'm primarily rocking with too. Lastly, I want to shout out Jason May and Flex Fitness Gym. Jason actually sponsored my wife Ariana and I going into our national campaign of shows this year. And Jason has also transitioned from a smaller gym setup to a full-fledged bodybuilding warehouse mecca called Flex Fitness Gym in Kansas City. And he's quickly putting it on the map as the destination for all things bodybuilding in the Kansas City area. So to the audience that's out there, if you are ever traveling in and around the Midwest, you need to make a pit stop somewhere and get a kick-ass training session, look no further than Flex Fitness Kansas City, located in the Northland of the Kansas City area. Best gym in town, bar none.
Yep, I can't agree more. I'm looking forward to doing an interview with Jason May soon here, so that's in the works. The grips, I actually bought those through. I think it was Shanique Grant. She had a promotion where she was talking about that. So I actually have those. I actually completely forgot about them. I've been having a lot of issues with my elbows. I guess I was taking a tire off and I didn't warm the elbow up, and now it's just like everything with the forearm and the tennis elbow, and it's horrible. And I wear sleeves, and it still hurts. So I think I'm gonna break out those grips and give them a try.
Dude, they're a great workaround, particularly for the tennis elbow, man. Particularly for that.
Okay, I'll definitely have to give that a try.
But
I mean, that's
yeah,
pretty
man,
much it. Yeah.
we can do this for a lot of the upcoming events in 2021. I know you said you're taking the channel in a direction where you're going to be doing a little bit more an audience focus and an athlete spotlight focus, but I think you're doing a kick-ass job with your pre-show reviews and your post-show wrap-ups, and I'd love to jump on with you and break down the upcoming shows that we have in 2021. It should be a hot season.
All right, guys, that'll do it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Bodybuilding News Network channel. I hope you guys enjoyed the interview with Ty Jordan. If you guys really enjoyed this video, make sure you guys subscribe, like the video, and comment below what athlete you guys would like to see next. My name's Sanj. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.